I just finished setting the table when I saw her giggle. That soft, stupid, high-pitched giggle that didn't belong in my kitchen. I was stirring the soup, his favorite, chicken and wild rice, when I turned and saw the two of them standing a little too close by the fridge. She looked down at the floor like a schoolgirl, and he touched her arm, just lightly, barely a second, but I'd been married to that man for 20 years. I knew his touches, and I knew what came next. They didn't even have the decency to be careful. At first, I told myself I was imagining things, that no grown man in his right mind would cheat on his wife with a girl who barely spoke in full sentences and wore crop tops to clean baseboards. But then came the late nights, the locked office doors, the sudden urge to shower the minute he walked in. He wasn't even good at hiding it. I remember one morning, I asked him if he wanted coffee. He blinked like I'd slapped him, then said, "Oh, I already had some." His shirt was wrinkled. He hadn't left the house yet. I knew, but I didn't say a word. Not when I found the receipt for the necklace, the one she suddenly started wearing. Not when I saw the lipstick on his sleeve, a color I wouldn't be caught dead in. Not even when I heard him whispering in the hallway at midnight, saying things I hadn't heard him say to me since our honeymoon in Charleston. I kept my mouth shut. Why? Because I had time and patience and a secret. The house, our big, beautiful, 4-bedroom brick colonial, wasn't his. It was mine. I bought it with the money I inherited from my grandmother. Put it in a trust. Let him think he was the man of the house. The kind of man who bragged to his golf buddies about his property, his backyard, his stone fireplace he picked out himself. I let him bask in that delusion for years, and when he cheated, I just kept smiling, even the day he told me he wanted a divorce over dinner. Like it was just another item on the to-do list. I nodded politely and asked if he wanted more wine. He said he was tired of pretending, that we both knew it was over, that he had found someone who made him feel alive again. She made him feel alive. The 23-year-old maid with fake nails and a college dropout history made him feel alive. I toasted to that. 2 weeks later, I packed a single suitcase, kissed my golden retriever goodbye, and walked out of the house I paid for. No argument, no scene, no tears. They moved in the next day. I watched from across the street. She posted a selfie from my bedroom mirror, his arm wrapped around her waist. "New chapter," she wrote, with a sparkle emoji. He looked so smug, like he'd won. But the thing about smug people is, they never read the fine print. The deed, still in my name. The utilities, still in my name. The cameras hidden in the smoke detectors and light fixtures, still sending footage straight to my phone. So I waited. 3 days after they moved in, they threw a party. Loud music, laughter, people I didn't recognize spilling wine on my carpet. I watched the whole thing on my iPad with a glass of Merlot and a bowl of popcorn. She danced in my living room in heels I wouldn't even wear to the trash can. He kissed her in front of the fireplace he didn't pick out. I waited. A week later, they bought new furniture, posted pictures, called it home. I waited. And then, 2 weeks in, I made my move. First, the electricity. I had it shut off during their dinner date. Then the water. Then the internet. He called the company, furious, demanding to know why everything was disconnected. They told him the account holder had requested it. He texted me, "Is this some kind of joke?" I didn't reply. 3 days later, I filed for formal eviction. Yes, you can evict someone from a home they don't own. Even your ex-husband, especially your ex-husband. The sheriff served the notice while they were eating pancakes. They had 10 days to get out. He called. This time, he didn't bother texting. He called like his life was on fire. I picked up. "You can't do this," he hissed. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "I already did." "You're insane." "No. I'm the owner." "But we were married." "And now we're not. But I paid for the TV, Tom. And I left it for you." "You're welcome." She got on the line next, screaming, cussing, threatening to sue. I laughed, really laughed. The kind that makes your stomach hurt. She had no idea who she was talking to. They spent the next week begging, then threatening, then begging again. I let them sweat, let them panic. Let them post cryptic messages on Facebook about betrayal and heartbreak. Then on the ninth day, I showed up, hair curled, heels sharp, legal documents in hand. They were sitting on the porch like kids who missed a school bus. He looked 10 years older. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I handed them the final notice. You have 24 hours, I said. He opened his mouth to speak. I raised my hand. Don't, I said. You made your choices. Now go pack your crop tops, she cried. He cursed. I walked away. And that? That was only the beginning. They moved out on a Sunday. I watched them from across the street again, sipping my iced coffee like it was a movie premiere. He had bags under his eyes, dragging boxes with a busted-down look that didn't match the swagger he had when he kicked me out. She was trying to hide her face behind oversized sunglasses and a ball cap, but I recognized the boots. My boots. She left them behind. Smart girl. First smart move I'd seen from her. I gave them until noon. When the last car pulled out of the driveway, I walked over with the locksmith. Change everything, I said. Front door, back door, garage code, windows if you have to. The guy grinned. Bad breakup. Something like that. He got to work. Inside, the place reeked of cheap perfume and men's sweat. They'd rearranged the furniture well, tried to. My antique cabinet had been shoved into a corner, and the rug was rolled up like they'd planned to sell it. I found wine stains on the couch and lipstick smudges on the guest towels. The guest towels. I took a deep breath, smiled. Then I grabbed my gloves and got to cleaning. Not because I missed the place, but because I wanted to reclaim it. Every dish I washed, every fingerprint I wiped, every pillow I fluffed felt like an exorcism. Like I was scrubbing away their stink, their betrayal, their ridiculous little new beginning. By evening, the house felt like mine again. That night, I had steak and asparagus in front of the fireplace. Alone, peacefully. My dog, the one they tried to keep, by the way, laid at my feet like nothing had ever changed. It should have ended there, right? I could have walked away, could have let them disappear into the mess they'd made. But I didn't. Not because I was angry, I'd already burned through that stage. It was because I was curious. Curious how far people like that would fall when no one was left to catch them. So I kept watching. Turns out, he didn't have much saved. He'd been spending like a frat boy on spring break, new clothes, dinners, hotel rooms when I changed the locks, flights to get away and reset. I saw the photos she posted from Miami. The hotel he could barely afford. The seafood tower. He probably had to Venmo in for installments. Within a month, he was staying at a friend's place. Within 2, he was back at his brother's garage apartment, sharing a bathroom with 3 teenagers. She didn't last that long. She left after the 3rd argument, moved in with some girl from a nail salon, and blocked him on everything. He texted me again, said he was sorry things ended this way. Said he missed my calm. Said he never realized how good he had it. That one made me laugh. He missed my calm. That's what he called it. My calm. Like it was a product he could put on a shelf. Like it didn't cost me years of swallowing pain, decades of managing his chaos, and nights of pretending not to notice when he rolled away from me in bed. I didn't respond. Instead, I made a call to a realtor. Thinking of selling? She asked. Maybe, I said. But first, I want it cleaned up a bit. New paint, new floors, a few upgrades. And I did it. Room by room. Hired a team of women-owned businesses. Got hardwood floors that gleamed. Repainted the walls in cool, elegant grays. Ripped out the old kitchen cabinets and had soft closed drawers put in. They made a sound when they closed, that soft click of finality. It made me smile every time. The fireplace? I left it. I wanted it to be the same one he kissed her in front of. A reminder. By spring, the house looked better than it ever had. Fresh, radiant, strong, just like me. I listed it at $9,500. It sold in 3 days. Cash offer. The morning I handed over the keys, I walked through it one last time. I paused in the hallway where I once heard him whisper her name, stared at the kitchen where I'd stirred soup while they flirted behind my back. Then I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and exhaled, a big, clean exhale. That was supposed to be the end. But it wasn't. Because 2 weeks after the sale closed, I got a knock at my new apartment door. I opened it and found him standing there, hair thinning, shirt wrinkled, that same cologne. Only this time, it made me nauseous. "I heard you sold the house," he said. "I did. For almost $1 million. Cash buyer." He stood there for a moment, like he expected to be invited in. "You okay?" I asked, not because I cared, but because I wanted to watch him lie. "No," he said. "Actually, no." He looked down at the floor. "I lost my job. My brother's kicking me out. I haven't been doing too great." I folded my arms, and I was thinking maybe we could talk. Maybe go for coffee? I tilted my head. "You cheated on me, kicked me out, let her sleep in my bed, and now that your world is in flames, you want coffee?" He winced. "I made a mistake." "Yes, you did, and now you're living in the aftermath." He reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. "Look, I know I owe you. This is just a start." I took it, opened it. A check for 1,500. I stared at it. "You think this covers what you did?" "No," he whispered, "but it's all I have." I handed it back. "Then keep it," I said. "You're going to need it more than I ever will." And I shut the door. Not fast, not dramatic, just quietly, firmly, like closing a chapter. A week passed. Then 2. I thought maybe that was the last I'd see of him. Maybe the universe had finally filed him under lessons learned and moved him off my path. I was wrong, because on the 3rd Saturday of the month, I saw his name pop up on my phone. Not a text, a notification. He tagged me on Facebook. "To the woman who built me up just to watch me fall. I hope karma comes quick." Oh. So now I built him up? Funny how revisionist history works when you're broke and bitter. The man I covered in insurance when he lost his job twice. The man I stood by when his own mother said he'd never amount to anything. The man who forgot every birthday I ever had but remembered the maid's shoe size. I read the post twice, then turned off notifications. Didn't comment, didn't clap back, because I wasn't finished yet. And revenge, real revenge, is quiet, surgical. I waited a few days. Then I called an old friend, Sheila, from my book club. She used to work in local news before retiring early. The kind of woman who still knew everyone, including the city editor at the Tribune. I asked her a favor. "Of course," she said. "What are friends for?" The following week, the paper ran a piece. "Local woman turns divorce into dollars." From heartbreak to high offer in a down market. There was a full-color photo of me standing in front of the house, now beautifully staged and glowing in the golden hour sun. The headline made it to Yahoo's front page. Then Reddit. Then local TV. They loved it. Everyone did. Except him. He called again. Left a voicemail this time. "You're unbelievable." He spat into the line. "You're using this whole thing to make yourself look good? You're a manipulative, cold-hearted." I deleted it. I didn't need to hear the rest, because the truth was, I wasn't trying to look good. I was good. And I was just getting started. By summer, I'd moved into a beautiful apartment complex with a pool, a dog park, and zero shared history. No hallway echoes of past arguments. No ghosts in the wallpaper. Just fresh air and quiet mornings. I started going to yoga again. Took cooking classes. Even flirted with a man in the produce aisle once, though I didn't give him my number. I wasn't ready for that. What I was ready for, freedom. But freedom gets lonely sometimes. Especially after 20 years of being someone's wife. Someone's problem solver. Someone's afterthought. So I got a job. Not because I needed the money. I just needed a reason to get out of bed and wear mascara again. It was part-time. A cozy bookstore downtown. The kind with velvet chairs and old wooden shelves that smelled like cinnamon and paperbacks. The owner, a woman named Elsie, hired me on the spot. Said she liked my energy. I laughed. "No one said that to me in a decade." She smiled. "Then it's about damn time." I liked Elsie immediately. She was sharp, soft-spoken, and had no time for nonsense. We got along great. Until one afternoon, about a month into the job, when I was organizing the romance section and I heard the chime of the front door, and I heard his voice. "Do you guys have any books on?" I don't know. Restarting after a divorce? I froze. I was holding the notebook. Of course I was. I turned slowly. There he was, my ex-husband, standing in the middle of the bookstore like a lost child. He looked smaller somehow. Or maybe I just finally saw him clearly. He spotted me and froze too. Oh, he said, "Wow, you work here?" I own the place. I lied. It felt good. He looked around. Nice spot. Quaint. I know, I said. It's mine. He shifted. Awkwardly. I didn't think I'd run into you. Yet here you are. I guess I just needed a fresh start, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I raised an eyebrow. Books are cheaper than therapy. He tried to laugh. It came out dry. I'm not here to cause trouble, he said. I just wanted to say you were right. About her. About everything. You'll have to be more specific. I'm right a lot. He swallowed. She cleaned me out. Took what little I had left. Said I was too broken. I guess I just needed to tell someone. I blinked at him. I'm not your someone, I said gently. Not anymore. He nodded. His eyes were glassy, but I felt nothing. Not pity, not hate, just indifference. He turned to leave, then paused. Do you ever think about us? He asked. Not since the day you made sure there was no more us. He opened the door. The bell chimed. He left. I turned back to the shelf. Put the notebook back where it belonged. Later that night, Elsie and I closed up. She handed me a mug of tea. So that was him. Yep. You okay? Better than okay. You sure? I looked out the window at the streetlights, my reflection faint in the glass. Elsie, I said. For the first time in my entire adult life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She smiled. Then don't let anyone drag you back. I won't. And just when I thought the final curtain had fallen, the universe gave me one last surprise. A letter. It arrived in a plain envelope. No return address. Handwritten. Sloppy penmanship. I recognized it immediately. It was from her, the maid, the mistress. She'd written for pages. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't know the full story. That he'd told her I was cold, controlling, that I'd made his life miserable. She said he painted himself as a victim, a man stuck in a loveless marriage with a woman who refused to touch him, love him, or even look at him, and she believed it. She apologized. She said she hoped I was okay, that I seemed strong, that she never meant to hurt me. I read the letter twice, then folded it up and slid it into the back of my desk drawer. Forgiveness. I wasn't ready. But closure, that was mine. They seated me at table 12 behind a flower arrangement that could hide a small aircraft, like I was some embarrassing relative they hoped would vanish into the centerpiece. I smiled sweetly and decided this charming boy my daughter married had just made the most expensive mistake of his life. Because I hadn't said a word. Not when they whispered about how lucky I was that he chose her. Not when they shoved me into the corner like some charity case in a borrowed dress. Not when he leaned across the table, clicked his tongue, and said, "Hope you brought something for the honeymoon fund." I did. I brought silence, and silence, my dear, is the kind of storm that doesn't knock, it waits. It studies, and then it rewrites the ending. You see, 3 weeks before that wedding, my late husband's estate finally settled. $33 million. It sat in a private account with only 2 names on it, mine and the attorney who handled it. I didn't tell a soul. Not my daughter, not the cousins, not the neighbors who still left casseroles like I was too fragile to cook, because something about that boy, that smug grin, that teeth too white for reality smile told me everything I needed to know. He didn't marry my daughter. He chose her, like a car, like a new phone upgrade. Like something that could make him feel like more than he was. And she fell for it. Lord knows I raised her better, but we all fall for something. Some fall for charm, others for fantasy. I fell for my husband's big voice and loyalty once. And now, here I was, watching history circle back with better lighting and worse actors. So I smiled. Let them seat me behind the foliage. Let them serve me the cold salmon and lukewarm wine. And I watched, that night, While they danced under chandeliers I quietly paid for, I stood near the bar and handed the bartender 100 just for listening. You don't want anything? He asked. Already got it. The next morning, I got up early and wrote 3 checks. One to a private investigator, one to a trust attorney, and one to a developer who owed me a favor. Because if you're going to do revenge, write not petty, not loud, but poetic you. Don't swing. You orchestrate. The private investigator came back 2 weeks later. 2 mistresses, 1 gambling account, 3 out-of-state business trips that never involved a hotel room with Wi-Fi. I reviewed every page. He had a type. And sadly, it wasn't loyalty. I took a long sip of my coffee and smiled. Perfect. My daughter had moved into a house he picked. Or rather, a house I bought, not that she knew. He claimed his uncle had gifted them the down payment. Uncle, my ass. I bought the house in my name, funneled through a shell company I formed years ago. Back when I had to protect assets from hospital bills and sudden investment ideas that always involved someone named Chad. So technically, legally, spiritually, that house was mine, and I was about to make that very clear. One morning, just before Christmas, I stopped by unannounced. She opened the door in her robe. He was in boxers. The place smelled like takeout and air freshener trying to cover something it couldn't. Mom? She blinked. Did we forget lunch plans? No, darling. I'm just here to collect the rent. She blinked again. Rent? He stepped forward. I thought this house was paid for. It is, I said. By me, which means you live in it at my mercy. He laughed. You're joking. I pulled out the deed. He stopped laughing. I'll give you 30 days, I said sweetly, or you can start wiring $4,200 a month. Rent's due on the 1st. No grace period. My daughter's mouth opened, closed. You can't be serious, she said. I stepped closer. I watched you let this man walk into your life like a king. Watched him look at me like I was dirt. Watched him push you around like you were lucky to be in the same room. She looked like a child again. Like the day she broke her arm falling off the monkey bars and tried not to cry. I didn't want to embarrass you, I said. I wanted to protect you. But now I want you to learn. I left before the tears came. Hers or mine, I wasn't sure. He tried calling. I didn't answer. He tried threatening. I sent him a copy of the wire transfer that bought the house complete with his name nowhere on it. He tried begging. I laughed, and when that didn't work, he did the thing all cowards do. He tried to flip her, told her I was controlling, that I'd manipulated everything, that I was jealous of her happiness. Jealous? Sweetheart, I was building empires when he was still buying gas in single digits. But she hesitated, and that hurt more than I expected. So I waited while they pawned his watch, sold her purses, cut every corner they could to keep the house. They scraped up enough for 2 months' rent, and then I raised it. They tried everything, swapped out their Audi for an old Honda with no hubcaps, started an Etsy shop selling homemade candles, each one named after fake emotions. Forgiveness, fresh start, healing. I nearly bought one just to see what rock-bottom desperation smelled like. They even tried hosting Airbnb guests in the upstairs bedroom, but no one wants to sleep in a house that smells like secrets and scorched opportunity. Month 4 came. No rent. So I showed up again, this time with a notary and a locksmith. I didn't knock. I walked straight in with my key. Remember that. He jumped up from the couch like I was a ghost. Whoa, you can't just barge in like that. Legally, I said. I absolutely can. He looked at the notary, who was already unpacking paperwork. The locksmith was halfway through rekeying the back door. What is this? He barked. An official change in status, I replied. You're now guests and your welcome mat just expired. My daughter came running down the stairs in a panic. Mom, please. We just need more time. I gave you time, I said. And space. And warnings. She glanced at the notary. Are you evicting us? No. I smiled. I'm removing you. There's a difference. He stepped forward, puffing his chest. You'll regret this. And maybe he thought that was true. But I wasn't done. I waited 2 weeks after they left the house. Then I listed it not for sale. No, for something sweeter. I leased it out to a nonprofit for domestic violence survivors, women who had been manipulated, used, gaslit into silence, women who reminded me of myself and maybe even of my daughter. The organization paid a fraction of market rent, but I didn't care. Every time that man drove past what used to be his castle and saw strong women rebuilding their lives inside it, that was profit. That was interest. That was compound revenge. But the best was still coming. Because, while he scrambled for odd jobs and pawned his fake Rolex, I was busy building something. Not just payback, a legacy. Remember the investigator? He found more than affairs and lies. He found fraud. Apparently, our charming son-in-law had a little hobby, applying for business grants under fake LLCs, using my daughter's name, fudging numbers, photoshopping documents. Stupid move, because some of those applications came during their marriage, which meant legally she could be implicated. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I hired a white-collar criminal attorney and slid the evidence across the table. I want immunity for my daughter, I said, and I want him to burn. We filed anonymously. He never saw it coming. 3 weeks later, I sat on my patio sipping lemon tea, watching bluebirds fight over the feeder, and then my phone buzzed. He'd been arrested. Fraud, forgery, wire scam, Perp walked him out of a bowling alley in front of his friends. I watched the video 3 times. Then I sent it to myself. Twice. When the news broke, the community whispered like a church on fire. He always seemed to slick. I knew something was off. My daughter called me in tears. Mom, you knew. I did. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I wanted you to see it. Really see it. And now you have. She sobbed. I feel like such an idiot. You're not, I said. You're just wiser now. He spent 6 months in county before sentencing. During that time, I sent him a care package every week anonymously. 1 bar of soap, 1 toothbrush, and 1 laminated copy of the house deed, with my name circled in red. Part 2 ends with him sentenced. But we're not done. Because Part 3 begins with my daughter starting over. And me? Oh, I'm about to do something no one saw coming. Name her my sole heir, but not until she earns it, not until she proves that she's no longer a reflection of him but a woman of her own. They sentenced him to 4 years in prison, not a slap on the wrist, not a fine with probation, 4 whole years. Enough time for the world to forget him, and for my daughter to remember who she used to be. I didn't show up at the trial. I didn't need to. Justice doesn't always happen in courtrooms. Sometimes it happens on quiet mornings, in the absence of noise. Sometimes it happens when your phone doesn't ring because the person who used to beg, lie, and twist is sitting behind concrete walls with time as his only companion. And sometimes it happens when you drop off a set of brand new keys at a small apartment on the edge of town and say, you can stay here as long as you like. No rent, no expectations, just heal. That's what I did for my daughter. She opened the door and looked at me like I was a stranger. Why are you helping me now? She whispered. I shrugged. Because I'm not done teaching you how to never need help again. The apartment was nothing special. 2 bedrooms, a little balcony, quiet neighbors, but it had one thing she hadn't had in years: freedom. No man to control her. No secrets crawling behind walls. No wondering who he was texting or why the money was always tight when he had new shoes every week. Just her, a mirror, and a choice. She started over slowly. First with part-time work at a bakery. Then classes accounting, of all things. Maybe to finally understand what he'd hidden from her. I didn't interfere, but I watched from a distance. And with every month that passed, she started walking differently, talking differently, like a woman who'd finally opened her eyes, not because someone handed her the truth, but because she tore off the blindfold herself. That was when I made a decision. I rewrote my will, took the $33 million and carved out a path with it: 10% to charity, women's shelters, domestic violence programs, Job training funds, another chunk to trusts I had started anonymously years ago, but the lion's share, that was going to her. On one condition: she'd have to rebuild something. Anything. Not because I wanted to test her, but because she needed to own it. I wrote a letter and left it sealed. Meanwhile, I had one more thing to take care of. Prison wasn't enough for him. He needed to know what he lost, and not just the house. Not just the illusion of power, but the chance he never knew he had. So I had my lawyer send him something. No note, just a list. A list of all the properties I owned, the businesses I had silent stakes in, the accounts, the trust funds, the deeds, and, at the very bottom, a copy of the marriage license he forced my daughter to sign without reading. Guess what she'd unknowingly signed? A prenup, but not in his favor. It was my backup plan, a little contract tucked between paperwork, slipped in with guidance from my lawyer during their engagement. She thought she was signing a tax document. He thought she was the asset. Turns out, he was. So when the lawyers tallied everything up during the divorce, he walked away with nothing. Not a car, not a dollar, not a couch, just his last name. And even that had no value anymore. 6 months after his sentencing, I went to visit my daughter. She made me tea. Her hands didn't shake like they used to. She smiled without flinching. "You seem different," I said. "I feel different," she said. She reached into a drawer and handed me something. A small journal, torn at the edges, filled with pages of messy handwriting. "What's this?" "My new idea," she said. "It's a guidebook for women leaving abusive relationships. Tips, steps, things no one tells you. I think I'm gonna turn it into a nonprofit." I blinked, then smiled, and handed her the letter. She read it in silence. When she finished, she looked up, tears in her eyes, but her spine was straight. "Why now?" "Because now," I said, "you're not her anymore." Her. The girl who thought she had to earn love. The girl who stayed quiet to keep peace. The girl who thought being chosen was the same thing as being loved. She closed her eyes. "I hate who I was back then." "Good," I said. "That means she's gone." The nonprofit opened 4 months later. A little office, a hotline, a website. It started with 7 women. Now it serves hundreds. She runs it with fire in her bones. Like a woman who once lived in the dark and now builds lanterns for others. Sometimes she speaks at events, sometimes she cries behind closed doors, but she never goes back. Not even in memory. Meanwhile, our dear ex-son-in-law was transferred to a medium security prison in Arizona. I sent him a postcard. Just one word on it. Obsolete. No signature. They seated me at table 12 behind a flower arrangement that could hide a small aircraft, like I was some embarrassing relative they hoped would vanish into the centerpiece. I smiled sweetly and decided this charming boy my daughter married had just made the most expensive mistake of his life. But that was 2 years ago. Now I sit at the front of auditoriums while my daughter speaks to rooms full of women, some with fresh bruises, others with bruises you can't see. She tells them how she escaped, how she healed, how she survived a man who wore charm like armor and used love like a leash. They listen, they nod, they cry, and sometimes afterward, they come up to me. "You're her mom, right?" they whisper. I nod. They smile like I'm a legend, a ghost turned guardian. But I don't feel powerful. I feel right. Like everything that was taken, twisted, and buried has finally been replanted. And it's growing. My daughter named the nonprofit The Second Light. Said it came to her during one of her walks, just after a rainstorm. "The first light is the one we're born into," she said. "But it's the second one, the one we fight to find, that really shows us who we are." I loved that. I loved it so much. I trademarked the name for her before she even filed the LLC paperwork. Because if there's one thing I learned from revenge and resilience, don't just build something, protect it. Of course, not everyone was thrilled about her rise. A few months after her story hit the local news, I got a letter. Handwritten, no return address. I knew who it was from. Before I even opened it, .it smelled like cold sweat and old grudges. .it said, "You think you've won, but you ruined a man's life. One day, you'll regret it." I didn't reply. I had it framed and hung it in the guest bathroom, just above the toilet. Sometimes, victory needs decor. We were planning the second Lights 2-year gala, a big, glitzy fundraiser at a vineyard in Napa when my attorney called. "Need you to come by the office," he said. "It's important." I drove down that afternoon, thinking it had something to do with taxes, but when I walked in, he slid a folder across the table. "You recognize this name?" I did. It was one of my shell companies, an old one, a dusty LLC I hadn't used in over a decade. "What about it?" He opened the folder. Bank statements, wire transfers, contracts I never signed. All recent. "What the hell is this?" He looked at me grimly. "Someone's been impersonating you, using your company to launder money, and you're going to be the one on the hook if we don't move fast." I felt the blood drain from my face, but not because I was scared, because I knew who it was. Prison had not changed him. It had sharpened him, made him quieter, smarter, more dangerous, and he had found a way to reach back into my life through the cracks I had forgotten. He was using my name to hide his dirt, and if I didn't act fast, he'd burn down everything I'd built through me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I reached across the desk, flipped the folder shut, and said, "Then let's give him the funeral he's digging." My lawyer stared at me like I'd grown a second head, but he knew better than to question the look in my eyes. This wasn't my first war. It would be my last. I went home, pulled out a bottle of scotch that hadn't been touched since my husband's will was read, and poured myself a glass. Not to drink, just to smell. It reminded me of control, of closing doors. Then I opened the old safe in my bedroom wall, the one behind the bookshelf that even my daughter didn't know about. Inside were papers I'd kept just in case. The kind of just in case that people laugh about until life proves it's smarter than fiction. I found a copy of the original shell company paperwork, notarized, time-stamped, mine. I flipped to the final page and smiled. The ink was slightly faded, but the last clause, it was crystal clear. Only the original owner in person, with proper identification and biometric verification, could authorize third-party access to the entity or any sub-accounts attached. Meaning, whoever was doing this had forged something big, and that meant two things. They were reckless. They were traceable. I didn't need to go to the FBI. Not yet. Because first, I needed a name. And for that, I needed someone who didn't ask questions. The hacker's name was Tony. Mid-30s, tatted fingers, laughed like a chain smoker who'd read too many spy thrillers. She owed me a favor. A big one. I called her burner. And within 12 hours she was sitting in my kitchen, chewing on a pencil, staring at the thumb drive my lawyer had handed over. "Whoever did this is good," she said. "Better than you?" She smirked. "No one's better than me. But this one's close. Real close." She tapped a few keys, eyebrows raised. They tunneled through 3 international proxies: Taiwan, Belarus, South Africa, and one I think is a decoy from a children's hospital in Iowa. "Sick bastard. Can you trace it?" She grinned. "I already did." She turned the laptop to face me. One word on the screen. Erickson. My daughter's ex-husband. Still serving time. Still behind bars. But not alone. "He's working through someone on the outside," Tony said. "A woman. Clean name. New accounts. She's the one signing the documents under your name. Can you find her?" "I can find her shoe size and blood type if you give me 2 hours and a half-decent sandwich." I made grilled cheese with tomato soup, old school bribery. She found the woman, mid-20s, blonde, had a fake nail business and 3 burner phones. And just like that, I had a face, but I didn't want to scare her off. I wanted her to talk. So I sent her flowers, peonies, in a black vase, with a card that read, "We need to chat before the FBI does. 3 p.m. Tuesday. Kafir so, no threats." No signature, just enough to freeze her veins and boil her curiosity. She showed 5 minutes early. Wore sunglasses and no makeup. The kind of look that screams, "I'm not hiding," which always means they are. I watched her from a table in the corner until she sat down and ordered tea. Then I approached. "I'll sit for 5 minutes," I said. "After that, it's out of my hands." She looked up, and I saw the flicker of fear behind her eyelids. "You've been signing documents under my name," I said. "Moving money. You work for him." She didn't deny it, but her mouth twitched, like she wanted to. "He promised me it was clean. Said you'd never find out." I leaned in. "He lied." She flinched. "I didn't know who you were at first," she whispered. "He just said you were rich, that you abandoned him, that you owed him." "I don't owe that man a damn thing," I said. "But you? You owe me the rest of the story." She looked around the cafe. Everyone was too busy scrolling, sipping, living. She leaned in. "He's got people. Even in prison, they get him what he needs. Messages go out. Money comes in. I'm just a middle." I slid a flash drive across the table. "This contains everything I need to fry him. Unless you do one thing." Her voice cracked. "What?" "Testify. Quietly. On record. My lawyer will handle it. You walk clean, or you go down with him." She stared at the flash drive like it was poison and salvation all at once. She took it, and didn't say another word. She just stood, tucked it into her purse, and walked away. A week later, she signed the affidavit. My lawyer handed it straight to the DA, and then I got a second call. This one from the Department of Corrections. "We've isolated the inmate," they said. "Your name is no longer on any internal logs." Good. Because I wasn't done yet. The gala was a week away. Napa Valley, white tents, string lights, old money and new hope. The second light's biggest night of the year. My daughter was scheduled to speak second to last right before a closing performance by a Grammy-winning cellist. She wore a navy blue dress and shoes that made her look like she was already walking toward her future. I wore black velvet and the necklace my husband gave me on our 25th anniversary, but tucked into my clutch, under the lipstick and tissues, a copy of the affidavit, because some victories deserve to attend the party too. When my daughter walked up to the podium, the room went still. She didn't read notes. She spoke from memory, from pain, from healing. She told them about the man who broke her, and the mother who taught her how to rebuild. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She glowed. And when she finished, they stood, every single person in that vineyard. I stood too. Not because I needed applause, but because I'd earned the right to watch her rise. Afterward, as the guests milled around and the wine flowed like warm silk, a woman approached me. Late 50s, soft eyes, hands that looked like they'd buried secrets in gardens. She said, "You don't know me, but I read about what you did. For your daughter, for yourself, for the rest of us." I smiled politely. She reached into her purse and pulled out a check, $100,000. "For the foundation," she said. "For the women who are still learning how to roar." I took the check with both hands, not because I needed the money, but because it meant something more than numbers. It meant we were being heard. Later that night, after the last guest left and the lights were dimming, my daughter hugged me from behind. "You did it," she whispered. "You really did it." "No," I said, turning to face her. "We did." She grinned. "Think he knows? From his cell?" I laughed. "Oh, honey, he knows. And every day he wakes up in that cage, hearing our names echo in rooms full of freedom, is a punishment no sentence could match." We drove home under a sky so full of stars it looked like someone had punched holes in the universe just to let the light through. And for the first time in years, I slept like someone who owed no one anything. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail. Not from my daughter, not from my lawyer, from a blocked number. I let it play on speaker while I folded laundry. First, silence. Then a breath. Heavy, rattling. Then you think you've won. You've always been so sure, haven't you? I paused. My hand gripped a towel so tight it trembled. "You took my wife, my name, My life. You think prison ends me? You think I'll rot while you sip wine and play hero? The voice cracked, trying to be calm but coming out like splinters. I have nothing left to lose. And when a man has nothing, that's when he's free. Sleep well, sweetheart. I'll be seeing you. Click. I didn't flinch. I simply pressed 9 to delete the message. Then I opened the drawer under the sink, reached behind the bleach bottle, and took out the second phone I hadn't used in over a year. The one that connected to a number not even my lawyer knew. I dialed. A male voice answered, calm, measured, with an accent I could never quite place. You were right, I said. He didn't ask who it was, just said, how soon? Immediately. Done. I hung up, placed the burner back where it belonged, and pulled the folded linen tight on my daughter's guest bed. Everything in its place. Everything accounted for. I wasn't afraid. I was done letting fear in the door. 3 days later, the guards at San Quentin found Ericsson's cell empty. No broken locks. No open doors. No signs of struggle. He was there 1 minute, gone the next. The story hit the evening news with a fever. Inmate escapes high-security prison plastered across every local channel like a wildfire. They showed pictures of him from 3 years ago, sharper jawline, longer hair, eyes that always looked too confident for a man with blood on his hands. What they didn't know what I did was that this wasn't just about a man slipping through bars. This was the last phase of my plan, because sometimes you don't wait for revenge to circle back. You deliver it directly. 2 months before his so-called escape, I'd sent a package to an attorney in another state. One of my husband's oldest connections. It contained a USB, a notarized letter, and something far more dangerous. The truth. Inside were video recordings, secret emails, and audio from years ago. Some taken before their marriage, some during, all damning. He'd been planning things longer than any of us knew. There was a tape, audio only, of him laughing with someone. Man, if she ever finds out what we're doing with that nonprofit's money, she won't, he interrupted. She's too busy playing wounded bird to notice we're gutting the nest. It wasn't about love. It was never about love. It was about optics, money, control. And I had enough to bury him. With the help of a private contact, a quiet ex-military man with a past filled with shadows, I arranged the escape. Except Ericsson didn't escape anywhere. He was relocated voluntarily to a storage unit in rural Arizona. One with a metal chair, a cot, and no windows. They fed him. They let him write. They gave him enough time to understand that the world had moved on without him. He signed a confession after 5 weeks. Handwritten, exhaustive, and perfectly admissible. He'd call it torture. I called it justice. And when I finally flew out to see him, not to the storage unit, but to the private rehabilitation center I'd moved him to afterward, I wore white, not because it was peaceful, because it was the color he used to make me wear when we visited his parents. He was thinner now, not from hunger, from truth. He looked at me and tried to smile, but his teeth didn't remember how. Why? He whispered. I sat across from him, legs crossed, spine straight. Because you tried to burn my daughter's life down. He swallowed. She never loved me. No, I said, but she trusted you, and you ruined that. He stared at the floor. You're not going to let me go, are you? No, I said, but I'll let you live. That's worse. Then I stood and walked out. He didn't follow. Because the door was never open to begin with. Back home, the world kept turning. The second light expanded into 5 new states. My daughter hired her first full-time staff. She gave a TED Talk. It went viral. Every now and then, people approached her in airports and hotels and said, "You helped me." And she always smiled, always thanked them. She never mentioned me. And that was exactly how I wanted it, because this was her life now, and I'd done what mothers are supposed to do, cleared the road so she could run. On my 60th birthday, she took me to a cabin in Big Sur, just the 2 of us. She cooked dinner. I poured wine. We sat on the porch and listened to the sea roar against the cliffs like it was still angry at the world. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You don't have to, I said. You already did. How? By surviving, and then thriving, by being everything he said you'd never be. She didn't speak after that, but she didn't need to, because the silence was finally full of peace, not fear. 2 years later, Erickson died. Heart failure. In his sleep. Alone. No funeral. No one claimed the body. I received a call from the facility. Would you like us to send the remains? I said no and hung up. Then I lit a candle. Not for him. For the part of me that finally died with him. The part that ever doubted I was enough. These days, I tend my garden. Hydrangeas, jasmine, wild lavender, each one planted in soil he tried to poison. And still, they bloom. They seated me at table 12 behind a flower arrangement that could hide a small aircraft like I was some embarrassing relative they hoped would vanish into the centerpiece. I smiled sweetly and decided this charming boy my daughter married had just made the most expensive mistake of his life. Turns out, I was right. But I never expected that mistake to give birth to something so luminous. To strength, to purpose, to second light, to her. And in a strange, poetic way even to me, because sometimes revenge doesn't look like fire, sometimes it looks like flowers.